excuse all the makeup from my face. I just came from the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny LA premiere and it was magical. First of all, before I even get into the review, we had a whole orchestra perform at the Dolby Theater by John Williams, playing some of the main music from the classic Indiana Jones movies and some from the current one. Now, going into this, you know, there was like mixed reviews online. I had actually not watched it because I wanted to watch it at the premiere and get that whole experience. And it was like an emotional one because it's like the last movie and I was already super happy that, you know, they didn't try and redo it or bring in like a new Indiana Jones. They wanted Harrison Ford. James Mangold was, you know, he didn't want to do it until he was sure he had a good story. And, you know, Steven Spielberg was there tonight supporting, so that was super cool. But I think the film was a great way to just end off like an iconic series of movies that have like been passed down from generation. You know, it came out in the 80s and I was born in the 90s. You know, my parents watched it, like I watched it. Kids today are still watching it, so I really think these are some special films. But small spoiler alert, which you can probably tell from the trailer, the story does start back, we know, when the Nazis were about to like not win the Second World War, and Indiana Jones, you know, kind of gets in this like crazy fight, and they use de-aging technology, which was actually footage from some stock footage from Harrison Ford that they used to basically, you know, take him back 30 years or whatever. That was super cool to see on screen, you know, seeing his face from previous movies but in present day film. And then after we see like the initial scene of why this Dial of Destiny is so important and the history behind it, we get thrown back into the 60s, which is the future for them, obviously the past for us. It's during the time where there was I think it was the space race about getting the first man on the moon. So it's, you know, either way it's nostalgic. Like you see stuff from the 1939, from the 60s. It's a lot of like cool moments. We have a new female heroine. And I just feel like this movie is different to obviously the ones that like came out back in the 80s. But it still has all those classic Indiana Jones moments. You got jungle scenes, you got traveling around the world, you got funny jokes and some of the little comments he makes, the little slick comments. You got the incredible music that drives everything and gets you hyped up in the moment. You got the villain, you know, the villain that you want to hate, the Nazi that's managed to like worm his way into the present day future, and he's trying to basically use this dial that was made 2,000 years ago that, you know, is able to take him back in time. So there's some super cool scenes. You know, Indiana is teaching archaeology to a bunch of students that just aren't invested in it, you know, as he was. His family has fallen apart. I won't give you spoilers there, but he's not, you know, the active Indiana that we all, you know and love. He has obviously aged, and I think it was really special just to see like Harrison play obviously his iconic role again, and seeing Indiana age, because it's like reflection, time goes on, like this is what happens, and we're seeing, you know, an end of an iconic series of movies, and I think it was the perfect way to end it, and instead of like, you know, de-aging him the entire time, that would have made no sense. So that was, you know, that was really, really special. And then many of the scenes, you could tell James Mangold did his homework because they were very like reminiscent of like previous Indiana Joneses, but with a different story and a different take. All in all, I love the costumes, the music, the action, the different stories, the world traveling, the stunts. It's exactly what an Indiana Jones movie is, and it never overdoes it. I mean, there's some movies that have come out recently that kind of went over the top with the action and the out of this world, you know, stunts, but this definitely was the perfect send-off to an icon. It's 2 hours and 34 minutes, but you really don't feel it because you're so into the film. You're like, you almost feel, there's scenes where you actually feel like you're in the ride. Like there's a plane part where you feel like you're inside the plane and you're like in the action fighting, and it feels like the ride at Disneyland, but almost better. Like I actually want them to like remake the ride to like kind of copy this movie, but it was the perfect send-off, the perfect way to end it. I really hope they don't try and like bring it back later on or change anything, which from what I know, it's not happening. One of my favorite parts were, you know, the face-to-face with Archimedes and, you know, the little reunited moments, which you'll see and I don't really want to get into. The nostalgia, the Indiana Jones hat and whip coming back into action. No matter what weapon was used, you know, it's always the one that comes out on top. Resolution and bringing back family and good versus evil, and finally seeing, you know, good can overcome monetary value. What's important is that these movies always teach a lesson, and whether you want to take it seriously or you want to just see it as a fun film, it's a lesson about growth, change, and being true to who you are, being a good person. You know, Indiana Jones is really adamant that he wants these artifacts to be in the museum, not to be sold for cash. And, you know, that's just the character that we know and love. And without me giving out too many spoilers, I can't say much, but it was definitely up to Indiana Jones standards. It was a perfect send-off. I'm really excited for you guys to see it. I absolutely love movies where the good person comes out and fights against the Nazis, because even though, you know, all of the Nazis and all the horrible things they did was many, many years ago, there's still remnants of stuff like that that's kind of occurring in today's world. And always seeing somebody like Indiana Jones come out on top and defeat them, although I'm not saying, you know, that's what happens in this movie, but as we've seen in previous Indiana Jones, he gets a lot of head-to-head with the Nazis, and I just love to kick some Nazi ass. But anyway, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny comes out June 30th, so make sure you watch it and let me know what you think below.